The 90-Second Mycology YouTube channel gets its name from using microwavable brown rice that's perfect every time in 90 seconds to grow gourmet and medicinal mushrooms at home without a pressure cooker or a pressure canner. I also have a no pressure cooker popcorn preparation video if you wanted to step yourself up from using brown rice as mushroom grain spawn. Popcorn has a longer lifespan than brown rice when the mycelium is consuming it and breaking it down. Moving on, it's now time for a no pressure cooker agar video, which a lot of people have wanted to see. If you don't know what agar is, it's basically just the most versatile tool in mycology that you'll ever learn to use. It can be used for things like germinating spores, testing liquid culture syringe contamination possibilities, cloning and isolating mushroom genetics, and a lot more. This is a pre-mixed blend of agar, and I'll get into that in a second. But pure agar is just a vegan substitute to gelatin, and is derived from a species of red algae. Once a lot of people learn about agar, they always have the question on if they can use gelatin instead of agar for these uses. And the reason why gelatin is not used is because the mycelium can break it down not even within a week at incubation temperatures, and then you're left with a plate of mushy gelatin and mycelium. Gelatin also has a lower melting point than agar, so if you let gelatin sit out somewhere and it gets way too warm, it can actually just turn right back into liquid again, even without any mycelium consuming it. These techniques in this video are nothing new, and they've been around for years. I'm always talking about buying pre-poured agar plates when you're interested in getting started with learning to use agar in your gourmet mushroom projects, but the next cheapest option is to invest in some nice small little mini mason jars and purchase pre-mixed agar powder blends. This will turn out cheaper in the long run for you compared to pre-poured plates, and eventually you can save even more money once you start to mix your own agar powder blends after buying the ingredients in bulk. I'll have a new agar recipe video after this one with a custom recipe in the typical 90-second mycology fashion of keeping things easy and simple. Not only are we saving money on not buying pre-poured agar plates, but we aren't even going to need a pressure cooker or a pressure canner in order to prepare this pre-mixed agar blend. If you are interested in moving on to a pressure cooker or pressure canner, I have a video on this channel that's an introduction to pressure cookers and canners, because even though the names are used interchangeably, there is a difference between the two appliances. Be sure to check this video's description and comments for links to most of these products that you see here. Also, don't forget I've got timestamps in my descriptions underneath all of my links if you'd like to skip through the video. So in this video, I'll be showing you the 90-second mycology easy pre-mixed agar prep without a pressure cooker, which is how things are done around here without a pressure cooker and still just as effective. Most pre-mixed agar blends like this will have everything you need to know right on the front of the package. It tells you how many plates the whole package can make, how much water you're going to need, and sometimes even the ingredients of the agar mix. This particular blend that I have right here is an activated charcoal blend. I got it from a mushroom vendor on Etsy.com for around $9 USD, and there's nothing special about it other than mostly being aesthetic to see the white mycelium against a black surface. Charcoal is said to have a little bit of an antibacterial property, but it's nothing substantial enough for you to want to choose over regular agar outside of just the aesthetics of the white on black. I'll have a video in the future on how to make some agar recipes that can be used to help clean up contaminated agar cultures. I have some mini mason jars here, almost like baby food size, and these are what I'll be using to hold my agar. I also have these half-pint wide-mouth mason gift jars, and these are excellent reusable agar containers as well. I measured the diameter of my jars, and this agar blend package says it can pour 20 100mm plates or 40 60mm plates. This refers to the diameter of the jars or petri dishes that you're using. So these jars have a 75mm diameter, so I can guesstimate that if I pour it correctly, I can make around 30 jars of agar with this $9 pre-mixed agar blend. Keep in mind that you really only need a little less than a ½ inch of agar. Anything more and it's just a waste of agar because the mycelium is only growing across the 2D surface of the agar. It's not necessarily growing into the depths of the agar like grains or substrates in 3 dimensions. The only thing is that this is a 16 pack of jars. Even if I use my 4 extra jars right here, I will still have a lot of agar left over, which I can store store away in my refrigerator and then melt back down and sterilize again when I need some more. You may see people use those ketchup cups or the plastic petri dishes. With this no pressure cooker agar method right here, we aren't pouring the agar after it's sterilized into containers like those. We're pouring it in the jars and then sterilizing the agar and jars together, and then the jars will cool off and remain sterile until you're ready to use them. This is what is often referred to as a no-pour agar tech, even though technically at some point you still have to pour the agar to get it into your containers. These jars have regular mason jar style lids with the lid and the band separated just like this. I won't be modifying these lids at all. I'll be using the same unmodified lid method that I demonstrated in my no pressure cooker popcorn preparation video, which is just leaving the lid flipped and screwing the band on until it's finger tight so that the jars can still breathe. In the description of this video, I will link to one of the most popular no-pour agar techniques on the shroomery.org forums from the user known as Pasty White. That official technique uses heat-safe plastic containers that are known as the Glad brand mini round containers. If you're going to use airtight containers like that, then you need to add a gas exchange hole. And the gas exchange on no-pour agar lids is not for the mycelium to breathe. It's to equalize the pressure inside of the containers while the agar is being sterilized, or else you're going to end up blowing the lids off of the plastic containers, or the glass jars can possibly explode. There's enough air in the containers once you inoculate the agar for the mycelium to grow across that 2D surface of agar. It's not the same as needing gas exchange to colonize a whole jar of grains where there's a lot of cell division going on and a lot of carbon dioxide being expelled inside of that 3D space of the grains. If you search deep across the old shroomery.org forums, you're going to find a lot more no pressure cooker agar and liquid culture methods, such as using your oven or microwave. The reason why agar or even liquid culture can be sterilized without a pressure cooker is because compared to thick, dirty grains, it's just a thinner liquid that heat can easily pass through to kill any contaminants. Agar and liquid culture are pretty viscous when they're melted, but just compared to the thick, dirty grains, they can be sterilized easily with different sterilization methods besides just pressure sterilization. If you ended up buying a pack of 1-quart size mason jars for my no pressure cooker popcorn preparation video, then you've probably got some empty jars laying around like this. And this agar blend says we're going to need 500 milliliters of water in order to prepare this. And right here on these 1-quart mason jars is the 500 milliliter line to measure our water. I'm going to use distilled water, but I would suggest you use either filtered water or distilled water just to have the best quality ingredients in your agar mix. Here is my 500 milliliters of distilled water. What I'm going to do is warm this up in the microwave so that our agar blend dissolves a little easier in the water. Warm-up times will vary based on your own appliance. This is still pretty warm to help dissolve some of this blend, so I'm just going to go ahead and dump it right in. Go ahead and start mixing it up. Now, if you wanted to use a microwave agar sterilization, you can look that up, but you would just microwave it just like this in your container with some sort of lid over it, and then you would need to take it inside of a still air box and pour it into your ketchup cups or plastic petri dishes. Right now, I still have to work pretty quick before it starts to solidify to start filling up my jars. I don't need to do this inside of a still air box because we're going to sterilize the jars after I pour the agar into them. Over here off camera, I've already washed my jars and lids with some warm soapy water. They're nice and dry, and now the warm agar is ready to be poured into them. So remember, you only need about ½ an inch of agar. And if you go a little bit over, that's alright, but it really is a waste of agar if it's anything over that. And it can get a little messy if you're using a big quart jar like this because it's not really made to pour stuff out of. Just gotta be careful. I'm gonna go ahead and finish pouring all these plates, but I'm pretty sure you have the idea. So plates are poured, and by plates I mean jars. It's all the same thing at this point. and I'm left with this much agar. So what I can do is clean the outside of the container there with a wet paper towel, just put the mason jar lid back on it and put it right into my refrigerator. When I'm ready to use it again, I can just melt it back down in the microwave or in a boiling pot of water and then start pouring some more plates or jars. There we go. Looks good to me. Now it's time for another finger-tight lesson on how to put these unmodified lids on your jar. Finger-tight is a canning term where you put your lid on and you screw it down just until it catches the jar and it's finger-tight. So I'm going to go ahead and put all my lids on these jars here. I'm going to get them finger-tight and then I'll move on to talking about the steam sterilization. And don't forget, all of the lids are upside down so that they do not form a hermetic seal on the jar and seal off this agar while it's being sterilized, which might cause the jar to explode if the pressure gets high enough inside of the jar. Following along with the same methods as my no pressure cooker popcorn preparation video, you want a large pot with a trivet, and if you don't have one, a pasta pot set up like this is just fine. You want to have the jars raised up from the bottom of the pot so that the direct heat is not coming in contact with the jars. The only thing I'm going to do different from my popcorn preparation video is that I'm not going to put foil on these jars. Having the lids finger tight like this is more than enough to not throw off the moisture content inside of the jars while still allowing the pressure to escape and equalize. If you wanted to put foil on top of these jars, go right ahead because it helps as a nice little contamination dust cover. But if you know your techniques are pretty clean and your environment is pretty clean and you're using unmodified lids like this, you really don't need to worry about the foil. I'm gonna go ahead and get this filled up now. Just testing to see how deep it sits in the water. It's alright if the water goes over the jars just a little bit, but these jars are so small you don't want any water splashing up too much onto the jars. And right there looks about pretty good. So I'm going to load this up and then we'll talk about sterilization times. As I load this up, I'm just checking to make sure that each lid is still finger tight, but not too tight and not too loose either. You want it nice and finger tight. You also want to make sure that your setup right here is on a flat, even surface because when this is done, we're going to leave it in here to cool off on its own. And if it's not level, then your agar is not going to be level inside of the jars. So check this out. I already did this off camera. Just barely fits on top of that jar. Not even touching the jar. If you were going to use a pressure cooker or pressure canner, 15 psi for 30 minutes is more than enough to sterilize agar. You could even get away with 15 minutes at 15 psi. But for the stovetop steam sterilization setup, 90 minutes is just fine. And if you have the extra half hour, go ahead and do a full 2 hours. Just follow all common sense procedures because you know that common sense will almost always prevail on this channel. Check your water levels, check the agar jars, make sure they're not boiling over inside of the jars and making a mess in there. So right now I'm going to bring this up to a small little boil and then turn it down to a nice little simmer. You can also purchase pre-mixed liquid culture just like this and steam sterilize it on the stovetop just like this as well. Of course, the best practice is to use a pressure sterilizer, but when you're dealing with just thinner liquids like this compared to thick dirty grains, steam sterilization is just fine. Just like I mentioned earlier, if you search around the old shroomery.org forums, you're going to find some old liquid culture and agar microwave and oven techniques for sterilization. Okay, I'm at a rolling boil now. If you can hear it in there. But now I'll go ahead and turn that down to a simmer. Every stove is going to be different, so it all depends on your own environment. But now I can set a timer for 90 minutes. Alright, my timer just went off and I just turned my heat off. So now I'm just gonna let this sit on my stove just like this and let it cool off overnight. It's officially been overnight, and we can see that things have dried off a little bit in there as well as cooled down, and it's ready to be pulled out of there and examined. The only thing I did forget to mention, which I also forgot to mention in my popcorn preparation video, is that I have hard tap water, and I forgot to add some vinegar to this water in this pot. So you can see in the light, maybe, there's some water spots on the jars. It's not a big deal, it's just kind of annoying. So if you have hard tap water and you do steam sterilization like this, you can end up with water spots on things. I've got a paper towel nearby just to wipe off any residual water that might be on top of the lids. A closer look at the jars now. Since we let them cool off overnight on their own, most of them do not have any condensation built up inside of them. But if they do, that's alright. Just like my no pressure cooker popcorn preparation video, you can leave the lids just a little loose, let them sit, and let it evaporate out of there. Another rule of thumb with agar is that if there is some condensation, you just store them upside down like this so that the water does not pool on top of the agar. It'll sit on the lid, and if the lid's a little more loose, it'll also evaporate out of there as well. These jars that were on the bottom layer, since I forgot to add some white vinegar to the water, I've got some water deposits on here. It's a little frosty coating. It's annoying, but it doesn't really hurt anything. So if you have hard tap water, definitely add some vinegar to your water before you steam sterilize. This jar right here was on the bottom, and it ended up cracking. These are some cheap mini mason jars, and I checked the lid when I pulled it out, and it was actually pretty tight, so I must have missed that one. It wasn't able to breathe, and sure enough, it just simply cracked. And a lot of water actually ended up in there. I can't really get it to show up on camera, but there's a lot of water that got in from the crack. So the jar's garbage. That's okay though. Still have all this agar left, as well as the agar that I put back in the fridge. Plenty of stuff to do some gourmet projects with. If you are not confident in how sterile this procedure was, you can just store them upside down just for a few days, come back and look at them, and if there's anything nasty growing on them, then unfortunately you didn't do well enough. What I'm going to do is store them upside down, wait a few days so I can show you that it's just fine. These are going to be a little more loose than finger tight. So finger tight was for sterilization, so water did not get in there. I'm going to loosen them just a little bit past finger tight and store it upside down so that it can breathe and get some of that moisture out of there. If there is a little bit of condensation buildup on the inside of the lid, we don't want it dripping down onto the agar and just making the agar all wet, and that's just not too good. I've got a lot of boxes laying around, so I just filled up a box here to make moving all these jars around a lot easier, and then I'm going to just set this up somewhere and check back in on them in a couple days and examine them to see if anything is growing on the plates. I'm sure this will spark a lot of questions like, oh, what are you going to do? You're going to put them in incubation temperature? You're going to keep them warm? What are you going to do? How are you going to do it? Don't overthink it. I'm just leaving them in this box. I'm going to put them up on a shelf, and my ambient temperature is like 72 degrees right now. I don't need to incubate anything until I actually inoculate the jars. This is just to see if it really was a clean procedure. Not for me, but just to show you on camera that this is just fine to prepare agar this way. These jars were put up into storage on January 25th, and now it's January 29th. I could let these sit even longer just to be sure, but I don't want to drag this video on too long for you because I know a lot of people cannot wait to see it. Start looking at some jars here. Here's one that's got the water deposits all over it that I mentioned. Adding white vinegar to the water will definitely stop that from happening. I'll grab this one back here. It looks pretty clean. You can get a good look at the surface of that one. It looks like it cooled off with a nice little dimple already in the middle. Perfect to drop some spore solution onto. Here's another random one back here. Having a real hard time getting this camera to focus on these jars. So it's actually kind of hard to even see inside of them anyway. You get the idea. I wouldn't lie to you guys. I've already looked at all these. If I found one that was really gross, I would obviously show it to you. I got nothing to hide. Here's one that I found that has something weird growing on the bottom of it that's actually on the agar inside of the jar. I can't get too close to it because this camera is having issues trying to focus on these jars. It looks like it could be bacterial, I'm not sure, but that's the only one I've noticed with something growing on the bottom like that. Everything else on the surfaces is looking pretty good in all of the jars. I did end up noticing that a lot of these jars have a good amount of condensation in them, more than I saw when I first pulled them out of the pot. You can see the puddle inside this one right here. See it rolling around on the bottom right there? I'll show you what to do with this. Number one thing to do, keep the jars upside down no matter what. Even inside of your still air box, keep the jar upside down. That way all the water is going to stay on the lid from the start. And then all you need to do is carefully open it upside down and just let the water drip out. It's clean water. You can wipe it up afterwards inside of your still air box. Not a big deal to clean that up. Then you can inoculate it as usual or close it back up and it's ready to be stored upside down again. If your jars are going to sit more than a month, it's best practice to keep them in your refrigerator upside down just like this. And then it's pretty normal for them to gather more condensation again in the refrigerator, so you can just perform the same procedure before you go to inoculate them. Leave it upside down, open up your lid, and just let some of the moisture drip out of there and you're good to go. This might freak a lot of people out. As long as you follow all common sense procedures, which will almost always prevail, everything is going to be just fine.